Director here at Pleasant Valley Business Solutions. I want to thank everyone for joining us in our introduction to Microsoft Dynamics NAV for government contractors. Today we're going to be providing an overview of Microsoft Dynamics NAV, which is a fully integrated business management solution for government contractors. So today's presentation is going to include an overview of the executive dashboard, fully integrated web time and expense system, project setup including billing setup, managing funds, invoicing and invoice formats, and managing indirect rates. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to our PVBS YouTube account later today. If you have any questions, you can post them in the question section and we'll try to get to those as they come up. If we can't get to your questions, we'll contact you separately. Later today, you should also receive an email invitation to take a post-webinar survey. We would really appreciate your feedback to help us make this a better learning tool for everyone. So please take a few minutes to answer some questions for us. We appreciate that. So today's agenda for the webinar will include a brief introduction about Pleasant Valley Business Solutions, and then we'll jump right into the demonstration of the product. So again, if we're able to, we'll answer questions as we go. Otherwise, we will try to save a little time at the end to answer those. Okay? So Pleasant Valley Business Solutions, or PVBS, is a top-tier Microsoft Business Solutions partner serving only the government contracting market. Our headquarters are just outside Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia, which gives us a unique access and insight into the GovCon community. And as an experienced leader with over 12 years of success in the government contracting market and an intelligent innovator with Microsoft systems, PVBS is a direct resource to both government contractors and Microsoft communities, and we do pride ourselves on that. So a little bit about the product, Microsoft Dynamics NAV for government contractors from PVBS, a rich, robust accounting solution compliant with federal rules and regulations, provides complete integration and ease of use. Again, PVBS is driven to develop excellence in providing the most comprehensive solution to our customers and our partnership channels. So right now, I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Paul Skirpsky. He's our VP Sales and Marketing and one of the founders here at Pleasant Valley. So I'll turn things over to him. Mr. Skirpsky, all yours.
All right, thanks, Damon, and good afternoon to everybody on the call today, or good morning if you're on the West Coast. We appreciate your time. And what I'm going to do is give you a little overview of the Microsoft Dynamics NAV solution. And as Damon mentioned, Pleasant Valley has been focused on not only Microsoft Dynamics, but the government contractor solutions for over 12 years, mainly focusing on Dynamics NAV and also Dynamics AX. Today is focused on the NAV solution, which has been around for actually about 25 years. And Microsoft purchased this company called Navision Software, and they did that about 11 years ago. They spent $1.6 billion on that acquisition, and they have achieved tremendous growth since the acquisition. So I've been working with the product since 1999, and the organization I worked for, we were a global smart card company doing work for both the U.S. federal government and also commercial marketplaces. And today, the NAV solution is now in use by over 106,000 companies in the world, and the total of licensed users is actually close to 2 million. So it's become the most widely used product in the mid-market, and we're excited about Microsoft's investment in it and also the continued innovation of the solution. Microsoft's business model is that they don't sell direct to end users. So whether it's the federal government or government contractors or other commercial firms, they work through partners, especially on the Dynamics side. What they look for partners to do is to drive vertical expertise and vertical capabilities. And that's what PVBS has done. We've built out solutions inside of Dynamics specific to what a government contractor needs to run their business. That includes the reporting, the workflow, the overall invoicing capability. So the things that are unique to a government contractor, they're all baked into the solution. And there's a term that Microsoft uses called CFMD. So Microsoft just loves, like the federal government, they love acronyms. And CFMD stands for Certified for Microsoft Dynamics. And that's what PVBS solutions are. What that means is any capabilities that we've added to the solution, they're actually tested and certified before we incorporate it into the base solution with Microsoft. So it gives clients a peace of mind that things are done with the same development standards inside the same platform as that core Microsoft solution. So now I'm going to, before further ado, I'm going to get you right into the product. And what I want to do is start out with a general overview. So for folks on the phone that haven't seen the solution before, we're going to give you a high-level tour, and we're going to focus on initially the main three components to the solution and really how they impact different people in the organization. The first screen that I'm on is the core Dynamics NAV system, and Microsoft calls this the role center. The idea is based on your role in the organization, you're going to have a home page designed a certain way. Microsoft interviewed about 5,000 different companies, and they came up with about 20 different out-of-the-box roles that define what is the key information in this case that accounting manager in a professional services company would be interested in. So we have different roles based on the type of company and also based on the role. So if you're a project manager, this homepage will look vastly different. As an accounting manager, things that are important to me are activities like generating invoices, making sure that people submit their timesheets. And I can tell you, when I meet with executives, this is probably one of the biggest challenges, is how do they get visibility of who hasn't entered time, where it's at in the process. And I think that's what Dynamics provides, is better visibility, better reporting. Each one of these stacks allows me to drill into it to get into the details. So the 6 expense reports that need to be processed, I can just select that number. Here are the 6 people that have submitted and had an expense report approved that need to now be reviewed by accounting for final approval and validation. When I drill into that, I can see the details of the jobs that the charges are against, the details of the charges, when they were submitted, any attachments related to it. I can pull up the attachments and make sure that we have the receipts on file. In a little bit, we'll get into the time and expense entry part of the system to show how that workflow starts. But it's all fully integrated, so I don't have to ever re-enter information. You can also see different areas like the integration with Outlook, the My section, which the idea is whether it's my jobs, my customers, my vendors, it's a way that you can manage a subset of a master list. If you're a program manager or project manager, your security can also define which list you can see. So it helps you to reduce the subset to just the projects the people that manage them should have visibility of. To give you an idea of the breadth of the application, I'm going to go to the department list to show you the kind of capabilities that are all inherent into the solution. You can see the different modules that are available, everything from financial management, which is going to include your general ledger, AP, AR, and fixed assets, sales order processing, purchase order management, for our clients that are managing any type of products for the government, warehousing, if you're producing goods for the government, the manufacturing side. We're going to touch, today's webinar is really more focused on services companies, so we're going to talk about the project accounting side. We also have clients that actually resell products. So SOUP 5 is the big NASA award that's coming about, the recompete, and we've got probably about 20% to 30% of the companies on SOUP 5 are clients of PVBS. And additional modules like resource planning, HR, payroll, all built into the system. The second piece we'll get into is, from a time and expense perspective, the place that all employees go to enter their time and expenses and have the approvers approve those type of documents. There's also a requisition process inside the system. When we talk about access to information, whether it's from the web or inside of Dynamics NAV, and Dynamics itself, in particular NAV, can operate, it operates in a client-server environment, but it also can be available via browser. Very similar capabilities. The idea is, depending on your role, for accounting people that are typically in the office, they like the full client experience, faster, easier to enter data. But for your project managers that are in the field, they might be more interested in the browser-based option of the Dynamics client. As a PM, things that are critical to your project managers are the status on projects. So you can make any of the different reports available to them, and also within projects we're going to show a little bit about creating actual budgets for projects. In addition to reports inside the application, and every module has a series of reports, there's also what we call analytics. The back end to Dynamics NAV is SQL Server, and we leverage for reporting services, and then for analysis, we leverage analysis services. Analysis services is a data cube technology, and what we've done is we've built out a standard data cube based on the type of measures that a government contractor typically is looking for to run their business. You can leverage different front ends. In this case, I'm going to show you some things in Excel, but you can use other business intelligence front ends to view that data cube. The thing that's great about Excel is that, one, a lot of people already know it and use it, and number two, from an overall investment perspective, you've already made that investment in Microsoft. We've built out standard data cubes that for any client that uses those analysis cubes, they get these views out of the box. So from a financials perspective, everything from a business overview, which gives me a trend of revenue, profit, and AR, balance sheet with its own key metrics, similar idea on the income statement side, and we're leveraging some of those Excel technologies, things like spark lines, things like slicers, that have become part of people's everyday life as they leverage Excel. Also cash flow and different indirect rate views, both a monthly trend, so this is showing me every month my different pools, giving me details of what are the accumulated costs in my pool, in my base, what's the actual rate, where is that comparing to the provisional rate that we're using for reporting and potentially billing if we have cost type work. An overview of my rates, so showing me both current period and where we are year to date from an indirect rate perspective. So each of these views can be made available to different people in the organization. You don't need to train them on the application. You can just give them this view that can be refreshed within Excel on a daily basis for them. You can also leverage SharePoint as the front end for that. So in addition to financial views, there's a series of project views. So this is the project dashboard, and what it's showing me is overall income statements by project and task, labor detail analysis, which is showing me by labor category, what is the trend of hours and dollars being charged, GL analysis, so any of your other direct costs outside of labor, what does that look like by project? Then also a burn rate report, which is combining both the project profitability with details regarding funding. So this is one of my favorites because I think this is one of the things that PMs have often done offline. We're helping to automate it, helping to empower operations, give them the tools to be successful in their job. So in this view, you can see things like the overall project revenue. So I'm choosing a particular project in one or multiple tasks in a period of time. You can see my revenue, my operating expenses, and you can decide how much detail you want to show here, so more or less detail on the operating expense side. What is my net income or loss? And then what was the overall amount spent in that month? So spent translates to how much the funding was burned. So you can see overall a little over $180,000 on average per month in the last 4 months. I can see that trend up top visually. And then based on the average of the last 3 months, the system is calculating what is the projected number of months of funding left. So it's just dividing my average by remaining funding and telling me there's 9.5 months approximately of funding left. So if you think about it, oftentimes PMs are doing this type of stuff offline. And the conflict that you have, because all this data, you can see when I select that measure, it's coming from the data cube, which is being fed from the accounting system and the time entry system. So typically what we've seen is companies have operations people building their own views. And what happens is you have a conflict between finance and operations because the data doesn't match. So what Microsoft and PVBS is bringing together is really one truth of information. You don't have that conflict because you're sharing the same data. So those are really the three pieces that we're going to show. Actually, one more thing before we're going to do a quick poll. I'd like to get an idea of the type of Microsoft products that you're using today. And before I do that, because I think this one becomes important, is the system dynamically, that analysis cube, it creates a pivot table. So for people that have used pivot tables, you're able to build your own view, kind of like in a query fashion, in real time. So you can see the different measures we have. And it's all in English. So I don't need to be a programmer to know the details of what are the budget measures that I have. So budgeted hours and budgeted G&A costs, budgeted subcontracting costs, budgeted travel. The job ledger is my historical project data. So everything from AR and billings, labor detail, materials, indirects, revenue. So if I want to report on something, I can just select it, or I can drag and drop it into the value section from an overall reporting perspective. And now what's happening is the system is querying that data cube and now dropping in what is the revenue across the business. Now in my rows would be ways that I want to group information. So let's go down into how I might want to group things. Go a little further down into some of the cube. Maybe by contract, customer, division, PM. So think about the different ways that people want to analyze the business. Type of job or type of client, maybe by period of performance. So once you decide how you want to report, same idea. I'm just going to take my contract, I'm going to drop that in. So now I get a high-level view of my contracts. What is the trend of revenue across all the contracts? In order to really get the trend, I should select some type of measure as the columns, because this is just showing me overall. So maybe I want to look at it by periods. So it could be calendar year, fiscal year, a little more granular, things like month or quarter. Same idea. We're going to drop the quarters in. So now here are my different contracts. What is the trend of revenue across those contracts? If I decided that contracts really isn't the way that we run the business, we've got division leads, and they're compensated maybe both top and bottom line. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the division and drop that in, and now you're seeing my different divisions in the trend. In my example, I want to look at just a few of the divisions. So I'm going to go ahead and just select certain ones to analyze. And now let's make it a little bit more colorful. Everybody likes to have a little color commentary. So in order to get that color commentary, we need to add some color to our views. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of really quick information so I can identify what divisions are potentially larger, smaller. Let's also add a chart into it. So now I can see very quickly that the commercial division, which is something we just started, is something that's a little bit lagging, and that's understood. Federal has always been our bread and butter. Let's analyze our federal division. So I'm going to drill into federal a little bit, and let's look at the contracts under federal. So now it takes me to that next level. So here are the contracts within federal, and you can see that the majority of the revenue is coming from this top contract. So let's get into more details on that particular contract. Let's look at the PMs that are managing task orders underneath that contract. So now I can get into the detail of who are the PMs on that contract. Maybe there's information that I want to know. Instead of the revenue side, I'm not interested in the top line. Let's look at what is the bottom line impact for these particular PMs within that division. So let's drop profit in as a measure, and we'll go ahead and take revenue off. And now we've got a much different picture, and you can see that some of these contracts were particularly struggling, and certain PMs, especially in the fourth quarter. Maybe I want to look at one of the PMs, what contracts they have. Maybe I need to give Jerry a call because I can see his Virginia desktop project, we're losing money. So now it allows me to quickly analyze data, or if I'm Jerry, maybe I want to get this information in advance before my boss sees it so I can make those corrections. So really trying to empower operations, all sharing the same information. So Damon, before we move forward, let's just get a quick idea of, for the folks on the phone, what Microsoft products are they using today?
Yeah, so I just put up the poll. Everyone should be able to see that and access that. We just want to know what products you're using. Excel, which most folks are familiar with, hopefully. SharePoint, Outlook for emails, and then Office 365.
Yeah, and we're going to leave the poll up for just a couple seconds. And the reason why I want to know about Office 365 is we've seen this really incredible trend, and I think for folks that have followed Microsoft see it, which is a lot of folks are going to Office 365, and one of the great things is Office 365 is integrated with Microsoft Dynamics NAV. And the thing that we're seeing is, we've got huge amounts of people that are using Excel and Outlook today. We're at the 90+% mark. In Office 365, we're around the 35 to 40% mark there. So I think the tools that we're showing are relevant to the companies on the phone, and I think that's really good to hear. All right, so that kind of gives you a general overview of the things that we're covering today. And now I want to get into a little more detail, because I think not only from a high-level perspective is this a solution that can help you to build the foundation for growth, but I think also, even in terms of the day-to-day work, there's some efficiencies built into what the solution offers. And how we're going to get into that is I want to talk a little bit about the job and job setup and the capabilities there. So let me go ahead and let's select one of the projects, and that's why I like that the My section. I guess as you get older, your memory is not as good, and it makes it easy for me to remember job 1014 is something that's important in a demo. I always have it on my home page. So while we're in this particular project, I want to touch on this box over to the right. It's called the Job Details Status Box. And you're going to see this status box everywhere in the system. What the status box provides is it's almost like a real-time online report for this record. So for job 1014, when I select this, I can quickly see contract value, $57 million, how much of it's funded. I can see the AR balance, what we've billed. Anytime you got a question about one of these numbers, AR balance, $98,000. What's that made up of? Well, let's find out, Dame. Let's go ahead and drill into that number. So just by selecting the $98,000, it drills me into the detail, and now you can see that there's two open invoices. These are from 2014, so the client's a little bit late paying. But I can get those additional details. If I wanted to reprint the invoice, maybe they said, hey, you know what? I didn't get that invoice for the $80,000. I can just go ahead and let's pull that invoice up. If we wanted to reprint it and send it off to them, we can do those type of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and navigate on that record, and we'll just give the system a second to pull it up. And now here is that sales invoice that we sent off to the customer. And I could reprint it if needed. You can see it was just for a system setup. But that's a way that I can quickly get the information, reprint it at any time. If it was a partial payment, I would see the fact that the remaining amount is less than the original amount. In this case, they hadn't paid anything on it. But if there was partial payments, I could actually drill into it, and it would show the partial payments against that main invoice. So the idea is when you have questions, it's a lot easier to answer them. So now let me get into some of the setup pieces to it. So you've got general information. In this case, this project is called Operable Unit Management. The client is Jacksonville Air and Space. If I wanted to find out additional details, I can drill into the client number. This is how I actually select the client, and it fills in all the additional information. The system also has the ability to manage multiple contacts. So if I had multiple contacts for this customer, I could have them all listed and related to that particular customer. Same idea with the contracting office and paying office. Who is the PM? What type of project? So just some basic tracking fields on this particular project. When I go to the contract tab, the way I think about the contract tab is this is information regarding how do you bill this. In this example, because it's T&M, I'm going to show you a little bit later on about the T&M bill rates. But If I can bill my ODCs, it's just a checkbox. I can bill them. Is there a markup? I can identify that. Is there any withholding or not to exceed? So this is the main job setup that defaults to every task order issued under this main job. You can see from the list of task orders, the first thing is, the first task on here is actually a firm fixed price task. So the system allows you the ability to have a hybrid contract where you could have some tasks, in this case, that are firm fixed price, but the other ones are mainly T&M. You don't have to worry about trying to group things back together, because you've got variation between task to task. In addition, I'm tracking information like what is the period of performance on this task, contract and funded value of the task. If I wanted to look at the details of this $46 million of funding, or $46 million in contract value, and the $39 million in funding, what's it made up of? Let's go into the modification detail, and it's showing me the history of every mod against this contract. Let's go ahead and enter a new one. If I hit F8, it just copies the line above it, and let's just say this is mod number 108. We'll pretend it came in on Monday, and we'll say it was for $500,000. Wouldn't it be nice if it was that easy to get a mod to your contract, right? So we'll go ahead and enter that data in. And now once I say OK, you're going to see that this task gets updated. So the system automatically rolls it to each successive level. So now once I say OK to the task, the overall job gets updated. So I can track in detail those funding mods. The system's going to track all the history for me. If you wanted to know the backup documentation for that mod, there's a document section. The document section allows me to take any type of document. It doesn't need to just be Microsoft documents. It could be a PDF file. It could be an image file, whatever it might be. It could also be an email. But the idea is I could actually take that document, drag and drop it against this section in the system. It's going to take that file, actually put it into SharePoint, and make it available for anybody that has access, one, to this record, and two, to the company's corporate SharePoint site. So a great way to collaborate, and we hear more and more companies saying we want to be more paperless. Great way to help you get there. So now I've set up the main project, the individual task orders underneath of it, and now the next key thing is related to, let's define how we're going to build this. So under Setup, the resource prices, here's the list of all the labor categories, what they bill out by project, and effective date. So you can see the history of all this. It's all available inside the system. I don't need to re-enter it every time there is a new change to the labor category rates. They can be entered once, and that's all that needs to be done. If I wanted to look at a particular labor category, I can just choose the labor category code. Let's filter to that value. So here's my corporate executive labor category code, and what are the bill rates over time. If I wanted to put that data into Excel, I can just hit my Excel button, and what happens is it sends that data off to Excel for me. We'll go ahead and open up that Excel sheet. And now in Excel, what you're seeing is the same information that was available inside of NAV has now been pushed out to Excel. And you can see that I did it today at 11:28, almost 11:29. If I wanted to keep this sheet offline, and you can do this in any list or ledger, I can just refresh that data. So when I refresh it, it's going to bring in, if there were some additional entries, I'll see that in here. So you can now see that it was actually about 30 seconds later. If I wanted to enter some data inside of Excel, so let's go ahead and let's make some additional entries into the future. So here's some future labor category pricing. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy that. And let's go down into our price schedule for 1014. And let's go ahead and paste it in. So now it's actually taking that data from Excel, putting it into NAV. You can see I didn't have to key anything. It also is validating all the keystrokes. So if I had a date that didn't exist, maybe there's leap year in there, and I try to put the 29th, or it was a project number that didn't exist, the system does all the validation just like I was entering it. So whether it's journal entries or you're doing some update to the T&M pricing, great way to leverage Excel to do those kind of things. So now we've defined the pricing. The next place we're going to go into is the time entry system. And before we go there, let's just talk about what drives time entry. So what's different than a lot of systems is time entry is so tightly coupled with the accounting system that all the setups I do for time entry, I'm doing them inside of NAV. So I do it in one place. It's all pushed into time entry. So there's no synchronizing, and there's no re-entry of data. So as soon as I add somebody to the project here and define what labor category code they're working under, it automatically makes it available on the time entry system. The system is also looking at things like the period of performance to make sure you're not entering against tasks that have expired. And you're also, by restricting the charge code, you don't need to worry about, say Harry Wise. If he's not assigned to this project, he doesn't even see it. He doesn't also need to worry about his labor category code because it's defaulting there for him. All right, so now I've defined the main project. I'm not going to get into these next couple options in detail, but I do want to touch on them, which is one related to budgeting and the next related to alerts. So inside the system, you're going to see budgeting both from a project perspective and then also from an overall GL perspective. So this is the place where you can build out your project budgets. You can also provide this access to the operations team. If they're the ones that own the budgets, you can provide them limited access to the system. So maybe read-only, but on the budget side they can enter data, and then maybe they can just run certain reports. You can really restrict that access down so they can see just what you want them to see. This is the place that they can define who's working on a project, enter the number of hours. You can also define any other type of direct costs. The system can take a 1-month snapshot and actually copy it to multiple months. So if I build a model where based on that 1 month, the FTE amount of hours per person, I can copy that out over the next 11. I've got an annual budget inside the system. So budgeting is something that really helps to empower operations, give them limited access, let them really run with their piece of the puzzle. They can also create multiple versions of that budget. So they can replan, have an initial baseline, update it as needed. In addition to when we talk about reports and dashboards, there's also this concept of alerting people. So instead of waiting for reports to run, I can also send alerts out to my operations and project accountants and other people that are helping to manage these projects. So one of these alerts allows me to compare either the spent or billed value to the funded or budgeted value. And then I can trigger an alert at a certain percentage. There's also reports you can run on funding alerts in particular. So if you want to look at any task that's at 65%, you can see that. The great thing about this is that the measure called spent is actually a real-time measure, and it's actually looking at time that's been charged in a current timesheet period that hasn't been processed. And for a T&M or cost-type contract, it's going to look at how much of the funding am I using even before I bill it. So if I have a T&M project and someone has charged 20 hours to the PM labor category code and I know it bills at $200 an hour, well, we actually spent $4,000 in the current period. So it actually gives me that advanced analysis even before accounting processes that time. So really a great way to be more proactive from an operations perspective. So let me go into one other project just to touch on it, and then we're going to go into time entry. And within this project, what I want to touch on is the fact that when I select something of a certain contract type, when I go to the Contracts tab, in this case it's a Cost Plus 6C contract, you can see that the details of what's available to me is now different. So on a cost type contract, instead of billing T&M bill rates, you're billing your labor based on the actual cost. Then you're applying your indirect. So this is my billing rate related to indirect. So it's either provisional, which is a corporate-wide or division-specific rate, or budgeted, which is a rate specific to this project. So in this case, I have budgeted rates selected, and those rates can be specific to a task. So you might have, one example is if you have the concept where you don't apply full G&A to travel. You can actually at the task level define that from an application perspective. But in this example, I've got, for this particular project, just the rates themselves, are at a different percent than the corporate rate. So you've got the flexibility there to model that contract the way it's delivered. On this cost-plus contract, you can see that a lot of the fields are similar, but I've got this whole fee component, which is you're billing the government your costs, applying the indirects, and then you're applying whatever your fee is. Then in this example, I've got 7% fee across the board on these direct cost components, only 3% fee on travel. So really it's helping you to automate by not tying your hands down into a particular model. So before I go over to time entry, I think it's always good, Damon, to get an idea of the type of folks that are on the call. So let's find out a little bit about what systems they're using. And I'll just remind you that if you do have questions, your control panel on the right gives you the ability to submit questions. And again, we'll cover them either at the end or we can also cover them as part of the process.
So I've got a poll up, and folks are going through that right now. What accounting system does your company currently operate? We're familiar with some. There's obviously a lot that are out there. So QuickBooks, Deltek, Microsoft Dynamics, Procrast, or perhaps something else. And we've got the results coming in, Paul.
All right. So it looks like we've got actually a pretty even split on today's call. We got about 20% that are on Deltek. We've got about 25% on QuickBooks. There's a good chunk that are on other today, about 40% on other, and we've got looks about 20% on Microsoft Dynamics. So we got a wide range of companies on the call today, and I think that's always great to help spread the word about what Microsoft and PVBS is doing on the government contracting side. So thanks for answering that question on the poll. So now we're going to go to the next step, which is you've defined all details of the contract in terms of how you're going to bill it, the people that can charge to it. And now let's go to the time charging side and some of the capabilities over there. So I'm going to go over to the timesheet, and let's go ahead and let's pull up a timesheet. The thing you're going to see is the system supports multiple timesheet periods. So that's all configurable based on your organization. So whether you have a weekly timesheet, semi-monthly, monthly, bi-weekly, we've got clients that have an 8-day timesheet now. So you've got some different concepts that are available and the flexibility to meet those requirements. What you're going to do from there is you just go to the day that you work, go ahead and you can put in your hours. If you need to put a comment, you can go ahead and do that, and then just save your time. So that's the process you need to go through on a daily basis. It's so easy. You would think that all of our clients would never have problems about people entering time, but I can tell you that talking to some of the executives at our clients, that's not the case. But so then, and we do have reminders, so you can have automated email reminders to any employee that didn't enter time for the previous day. You can also copy their supervisor. If I needed to enter a new line in the timesheet, I just go ahead and enter a new line, and I just start typing. So I can type in the number or the description, either one. So if I want to type in the description, it does the same type of thing, filters it down for me of what's on this particular, available on this project. And I'm only seeing the projects and codes that are available to me. So in this case, if I needed to charge to the lab analysis task, go to the day that I need to enter that, save it. That's what I'm going to do on a daily basis. The system has controls in place for things like if you restrict time entry in advance on direct charge codes, you can prevent that, and it gives the employee a warning, prevents them from doing that. Also, if I needed to change a previously saved cell, the government on electronic time systems requires a comment. So if I try to change my hours on Monday from 4 to 5, It's telling me I need a reason for that change. So we'll go ahead and let's enter the reason. Finish, save it. That's what I'm doing on a daily basis. So it really is, intuitive for an end user. You have configurable options in terms of how you handle the approval of time, including employees can look up their PTO balance and also request time off as part of their process. So I'm going to go over and let's just touch on expense reports a little bit. We can create one on the fly to give you an idea of the process for doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new expense report. And because it's so cold here today, I'm looking forward to traveling down south. So I'm going to go ahead and dream about traveling to Tampa. And we'll pretend that I went there last week. So let's say that maybe it was from the 19th, and let's say that I was there through the 22nd, or actually I should stay through Friday, at least to enjoy some of the weekend there. So I'm going to go ahead and create that expense report, and now we're going to add some lines to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is put airfare, and you can restrict the charge codes, same idea. People can see just the charge codes they're assigned to. And then the same thing with choosing projects, either by the number or by the description. So we'll go ahead and choose a travel task, and let's just say that this was on United, and the cost was $350. The one thing I skipped over is this paid by. So you can identify if an expense was paid by the employee, or they could have used the company card, or it could have been a personal item that was company paid. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that detail, save it. If I needed to add some type of receipt, I could upload a file. If I traveled based on per diem, I could leverage the per diem wizard, where I would identify where I traveled, again, where, the job that it's against, the meals code. It's just telling me the state is required because I need to know the state and location in order to tell you what the per diem is. But just to give you a sense of what it looks like, then it pops up this window that I can uncheck any of my meals and incidentals. So for instance, if breakfast was included with my lodging, I can uncheck that. It handles the 75% first day and last day in terms of meals and incidentals. And then for lodging, it's going to tell you what the lodging ceiling is, and then the user can enter their actual lodging, actual taxes, separate lines. It'll fill it all out in the expense report for them. Once they submit their expense report, what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and kick off the workflow for someone to approve it. So once I hit that submit button, my approver gets an email, they're notified, and then from their homepage, they can go ahead and review it, approve it, or reject it. The great thing is that as I was entering that expense report on the web, what you're going to look, hit the wrong button there. I need to go to my expense report and not the actual invoices afterwards. So the expense report, you can see that we'll go down a little bit, and we'll open up this, and now you can see that here was that expense report that was created and just submitted a few seconds ago. So accounting doesn't need to do any rekeying. Again, it just makes it easier and reduces errors because there's not a manual step in that process. So now I've entered time, I've approved it, same idea with expenses, and now it comes to the processing side of it. So let's go ahead and let's show how you can process that time, bring it in, and then go ahead and bill that out. So the first step is you're probably going to run your missing time report. And again, we've got that automation from an email perspective to alert people that you haven't entered time or you haven't submitted their time, and then you want to have the approver also notified you can do that. So you run this missing time report, and it's going to show you, who hasn't finished their part of the job. You can go ahead and chase them down, email, call, whatever mechanism to get them to do that. And then from there, you're going to run the import timesheet function. What this is going to do is actually bring in the details of everyone that has had the time submitted and approved, what codes it goes against, the number of hours, etc. From there, run the labor distribution, and the system supports the standard methods that the government approves, your standard rate, effective rate, dilution methods of how you calculate either your unit cost or the hours based on the time charge. So all using total time accounting. So your employees are entering every hour. The system is managing that rate calculation for you. The system has the ability to process payroll, but if you're looking to outsource that, we've got standard integration and also relationships with companies like ADP, Paychecks, a local company in the DC area called Payroll Networks that does a lot of work with government contractors. So those are all built into the application, available for you day one. Once you've gone through to do each of those steps, before you actually send it off or process it, you probably want to do a little audit of the information, and you can run this time journal summary report. It's going to give you the details of when I post this transaction, what's going to happen. And I remember from the list of companies on there, we had some Dell Tech users and also this other group. And for companies that are using older technology that have batch processing, it's more modern, so things are posted in real time. So when I post this journal, what you're seeing is it's hitting multiple ledgers. So it's not just getting posted to the project side, it's also hitting the employee's ledger, the project ledger, and also the general ledger all in real time. So when you close the month, you don't close each of the ledgers. Everything is all posted in real time. So it gives you more accurate real-time information across the board with the system. So now once I've done all that and I know it's accurate, I go ahead and post it, and that's the point where it's going to be available from a reporting and billing perspective. So the last thing to mention about reports, and you'll see this throughout the system, is every report, including the invoices, they all have these exports. So Excel, PDF, and Word are all available as exports of reports, or we're going to show you right now the whole concept of generating invoices inside the system. So now that I've entered all that data, and I think what you're seeing is the process is really streamlined from an overall functional perspective. So everything nicely tied together. So to generate the invoice, the first thing you're going to do is run this create invoice function, and we're going to choose the period of time we want to run it for. So you can see it defaulted to last month, but I'm going to go ahead and we're going to run it. I know I've got some information in February, and if I want to invoice by task, I can do that. I'll say OK. And what it does, it takes all the entries that have been processed against this project, make them available on what we call a billing worksheet. So that billing worksheet is the pre-invoice that I can review, and then if I need to get approval, I can do that. So let's go ahead and preview it. You can set up different formats for your invoice. So whether you want to show your labor by resource or labor category, you can do that. Show inception date or year-to-date data. Print the CLIN, the WBS, or the ACRN. If you want to break out the tasks, so each section have a task, we can do those type of things. So we'll go ahead and preview it. So the first time we ran it, you can see that it's showing the details of each task. I've got the overall information regarding the contract number, funded value, how much funding is left after this invoice, and then each task and who's billing to it, the hours, the rates, those extended amounts. So once accounting does their review and they're comfortable with it, the next step is they're going to send it off for approval. So this approval process, what it's going to do is it's going to send an email out to, in this case, the project manager associated with this project, and that email is going to take them into SharePoint so they can actually approve or reject it. You can see that this is saying pending approval right now. So this is a great way to communicate. I don't need to worry about taking these things offline so that I can send them back to somebody for approval. So it's all done inside the system. And I guess just a little feedback. One of the things that when we do our presentations and webinars, we go into a lot of detail. And the reason is because the processes are efficient. So I think with other systems, sometimes the reporting might be nice, but how you get the data into the system is so hard, you can never get the reports out. So we're trying to show you a blend of both, that really it's a system that can help you be efficient, share that one truth of information, really have a more integrated, automated system. So once I finish having that approval done, I would just go ahead and update the approval request. Then I can post that information, and then it's available to reprint. So I want to we got one last poll we want to cover before we close out the section on the webinar. And the poll we want to cover is, what are companies looking to improve? Because we're showing some ways that we are improving, and it'd be great to hear from the folks on this webinar of, what are the initiatives you have as a business?
All right, so I have the poll up, Paul, and again, like you said, one answer, but what's the most important thing for your organization to improve? A lot of folks look at reporting. There's a lot of automation that's available today that wasn't before, so that's something that organizations are clamoring for. Compliance, we do have a lot of government contractors who use systems that are not compliant, and that's something that would certainly improve the company. Integration with other systems, and again, others. We can't think of everything, but we do have quite a bit coming in.
And if you have something that's not up there, why don't you can put it in the question. Let us know what's important to you, because I think that feedback also helps us to drive improvement.
Absolutely.
So just to, I guess Damon just closed the poll, and the top three, I'll give them to you in order, are number one, compliance, number two, reporting, and number three, automation. So those are the key things that the folks on the phone that are important to them, and it also helps. We also talk to our clients about this and prospects, because it helps us to drive how do we make the solution better for the organizations we're working with.
It's like that old cliche, if it's important to you, it's important to us.
Absolutely, because I think really the clients and people in the industry really do know best of what is it that you need to run your business more effectively. So now where we dropped off was we were reviewing that invoice. And then once we post it, it becomes a posted invoice document. And one of the things that's nice is you can see up in the ribbon, that process it goes through. It goes through from creation of invoice to invoice worksheet to posted invoice. The thing about the posted invoice that's nice is that it's always available to you. You can reprint it as many times as you'd like. So it doesn't need to be something that if you don't print it one time, you can't get back to it. And there's systems out there, believe it or not, that still do that. This allows me to reprint it anytime. So those same formats we touched on earlier, I can reprint it in those from those optional perspectives. The other thing is, in addition, there's government forms available built into the system. So the DD-250, which is your material inspection form, the 1034 and 1035, those are components related to the government standard public voucher. So if I wanted to print it off on a 1034, 1035, I can go ahead and run that inside the system. So, instead of hand keying this thing in, I don't think people use typewriters anymore, but maybe they do. You could actually type it in, but I guess I'm dating myself a little bit there. But, really helping you to, manage those things and not have to worry about the offline process. All right, so the last concept we're going to cover today is we talked earlier about this whole idea of indirects, and we talked about the fact that you can have your cost reimbursable contracts done based on either provisional or budgeted rates. So I'm guessing some people were thinking, where are my provisional rates stored? So that's where I'm taking you to, and the thing that I'll mention on this is the indirect rate setup or cost pool setup is as simple or as complex as your business, and it continues to evolve with your business. So in this example, in my demo system, I've got a fringe pool, I've got two overheads, subcontract material handling, and G&A. Each one of these pools, so there's 4 steps to define it. The first step is you define your rate structure. The next is define how that rate gets calculated. So it is the combination of what are the accumulated costs within this pool. So it's just a range of GL accounts and then a range of departments. So I've got certain departments that are participating in this pool. Then I've got my base. So in this example, it's direct labor for those same departments. then from there, once I define how the rate gets calculated, now once I calculate those costs, how do I allocate them? Is it an intermediate pool where the costs are accumulated and then moved into another GL account to be later picked up? Or in this example, they're being allocated out to projects. So once I calculate the overhead, I'm allocating out to projects at both a provisional rate and an actual rate, and then it's looking for, in this case, any project where 102 or any task that 102 was defined. So the system is going to do all that math for you. And then the last piece is, from an indirect provisional perspective, what is the provisional rate that you're using for the billing and allocation side? You can also see the history of that through time, both the provisional rate and then once it's approved, the final rate. So you don't need to worry about, keeping that data offline. It's all available within the system. And then on a monthly basis, you're just running your allocate cost function. So within the system, your monthly close process, very streamlined. And we've got some statistics if people are interested, but moving clients off of certain systems, we've reduced the close process, anywhere from 50%, to even greater percentages. They've cut it down from 5 or 6 days or 10 to 12 days down to 3 or 4 days. So we're talking about significant reduction in the close process. So if your close process is long today and you're on a different system, talk to us. We can tell you how this can help. So you run those allocations on a monthly basis. It's going to make the entries for you, both against the project side and the general ledger side. To get an idea of what it looks like, let's go over to our chart of accounts, and I'll give you a quick tutorial on how that information from a chart of accounts perspective is flowing through. So I'm going to go down to a section where I've got some indirect costs, and let's look at our allocations area. So what you see is the costs all get accumulated, and then we've got accounts for allocations. The thing regarding the accounts is you can see they net to zero because the costs have already been posted, and now we're just moving them to show them against projects. And I can actually drill into these. So I'm looking at the $50,000 in terms of my provisional overhead allocation. And when I drill into it, I can look at how those allocations were actually calculated. So my provisional rate of 115% times whatever in this example, my overhead was based on labor. So the labor for a particular project and task tells me how much of the overhead should get allocated. This is from a provisional perspective, but then there'll also be the allocations based on actual. So today, we crammed a lot into a short period of time. So we want to be respectful of your time. I know we've got a handful of questions. So Damon, I'm just going to cover a couple of them because really we've got 2 minutes. We want to make sure that we get folks off on time.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the robust system is a lot to cover, and we are just scratching the surface on a lot of the capabilities. But
Yeah.
so I'll let you take those questions and answer this real quick. We've got 2 minutes.
Okay, and that leads into actually the first question is, there was a question regarding, can you show me the supply chain manufacturing capabilities in the system? And what I would say is, the system has, as we mentioned, modules across the board for different capabilities. If you have a particular area of interest, you can either submit it on the panel like this individual did. We'll also follow up with you to get those questions answered. So it does have the capabilities. We can have a one-on-one to follow up to show you the detail. Next question was regarding the size of company that's the best fit for this solution. So it's really a wide range. Difficult to answer in some ways because it's based on the type of business when you talk about employee headcount. But on average, our clients typically, we start to work with them when they're about $10 million in revenue. We've got clients that are over $1 billion in revenue. So really a wide range of companies. And then the last question was regarding the cost. And again, that is something that what we'll do is, for the individual that asked that question, we'll follow up with you one-on-one because the license model is different than some of the competitors. It's based on concurrent user, and there's 2 different types of users. So your time entry users are unlimited, and then you've got what we'll call enterprise users and then limited users. And we'll follow up with you to get you the answer on that so we can share that information. But it's 12 noon, and again, we just want to say thank you for your time today, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for joining us today, and go to our website, look at the event calendar. There's other events out there that you can join us for. You can contact Paul or me directly, and we'll be happy to help you out with anything we can. Thank you very much, and have a great day.